We're up to chapter 1, verse 4. Yesterday we read that you're supposed to rebuke your children one right before you die. That's the appropriate time to give rebuke. And the Talmud and Rashi gave 4 reasons for that. So Baruch Hashem. So now we sit the 4 reasons that Rashi gave yesterday. And he quoted the Sifri were one, so that you don't want to have to rebuke him twice. 2, if you rebuke him, he's probably going to be upset at you. So you want to avoid having a lifetime of you want to avoid a lifetime of being upset with him, and also was that you don't want the people who are rebuked to have a grudge, and you want to part on peaceful terms, and also you don't want him to be embarrassed because you rebuked him, and you don't want him to be embarrassed in front of you that you just rebuked him. So anyway, this was what Rashi said. Who am I to argue with Rashi? As was pointed out by Rabbi Yosef at the end of the discussion, it worked a little better in the examples that they cited, which was Yaakov, because Yaakov knew exactly when he was going to die, and Moshe knew when he was going to die. But we don't always have that good fortune. So 47 days later. So we don't always have. Anyway, the point of it is, I'm saying, if you have something that you really think you need to say, don't wait till right before you die. If you think it's of value, then try to figure out a nice way to say it, and say it in as nice and respectful way as possible. If you care about the person, you love them, obviously you want to say it to them so that they can be better. But if you're in doubt, my attitude to rebuke is like taxes and tachanun. When in doubt, leave it out. Okay, so we go to verse 4. So when this whole story is taking place, Moshe is giving this speech after he had struck Sichon Melech HaMori, Sichon the king of the Amorites, Asher Yoshev v'Cheshbon, who was living in Cheshbon, as Og Melech HaBashan Asher Yoshev Asherot Badrei. So this whole speech took place. Moshe started rebuking the people after he struck Sichon, the king of the Amorites, and Og, the king of the Melech HaBashan. You know where Bashan is? Anybody know where it is? It's in Ashtarot in Edrei. Do you know where that is? We go on. Well, we have a ringer here. We got a scholar here. And he's not just a ringer because he lives in Israel. He's a ringer because I know his parents and they're scholars. And on all sides, his grandparents are scholars. So what do you expect? That he knows the correct answer. Okay. Achrei Koto, after he struck him, Amar Moshe. Moshe said, says the Rashi, if I rebuke them before they go into the land or the edge of the land, they will say, Yomru, Malazalenu, Maitivlanu, Eno Balakanter. If I rebuke them too early, they're going to say, why is he bothering to rebuke us? He didn't do anything for us. He's just Eno Bo Elakandervum, so Ilan, he's trying a pretext. Shame Bokoach, he said, because the only reason why he's rebuking us, telling us we're no good, is because he can't take us into the land. He's looking for an excuse. But therefore, Lafikach, Himtina Chipul Sichon V'Oglefnehem, Morishamet Artsam, Achakach Ochichan. He waited till he defeated, he had the military victory, and then he rebuked them. That was when he thought they would listen to him. Once he had these tremendous military victories, then he knew that Bnei Israel would finally pay attention to what he said. He had more credibility. So you see, Moshe was politically astute, in case you had doubts about that. Sichon, the king of the Amorites, Asher Yoshev b'Cheshbon. So Rashi has a beautiful Rashi here. Rashi says, Ilu lo haya Sichon kasheh, haya sharoi b'Cheshbon, haya kasheh. Shamadina kasha. So Rashi basically points out, let's say Sichon was not the king and it was just Cheshbon. It would have been really hard to defeat Cheshbon because Cheshbon was a very fortified city. And now he's going to say, and if it was a different city, and Sichon was living in it, Hayakasha would have been very different, very difficult because the king was hard. So therefore, how much more so, where the king is hard and the country is hard, and Moshe defeated them. Rashi told us in Bamidbar that that they would never have been able to go in, except God made it that they went out to attack. But that was how they were able to defeat them. They came out to attack. Asher Yoshev Ashtarot, they live in Ashtarot. Hamel Kasha, Medina Kasha. The king is hard and the place is hard. Ashtarot, Rashi says Ashtarot is an expression of a cliff and a harshness. Okay. Adrei Shema Malchut. Adrei is the name of the kingdom. Okay, so now we go up to the next pasuk. It says, "Ho'il Moshe be'ever Yardei meretz Moab. Ho'il Moshe be'eret haTorah more." On the other side of the Jordan, the land of Moab, Moshe, Rashi translated it as began to explain this Torah. Rashi says began, but other commentaries say Ho'il means desired. Here, Elliot, Vakasha, please read verse Hey. Ho'il means to begin. Hitzchil, like Hinena ho'alti, behold, I have begun. So the word Ho'il means he began. Okay, B'eres HaTorah. In 70, so he started. So Moshe, at this point, explained the Torah to them in 70 languages. Why is he explaining the Torah to them in 70 languages? Why do the Jewish people have it in 70 languages? So meaning to say, the Jewish people, the commentaries say 70 languages plus Hebrew. So the Jewish people, presumably, at least in the rabbinic understanding of it, spoke Lashon HaKodesh, which is Hebrew. So then they had 70 languages. Why does he need to say to the Jewish people in those 70 languages? What's the point of this midrash? Anybody have an answer to that? Yes, Ben.
I learned about this earlier this year.
Okay, go for it.
A little tour with the Moko meaning.
Okay. Okay, beautiful.
I remember things, but so I don't know if this will directly answer your question. There are almost 80,000 words in the Torah.
Okay.
If you imagine translating that into 70 languages, that would be an immense number of words, right, in all the different languages. So
okay.
Accounting for some cognates, say, similar words.
Okay.
So this came up in the context of why in Kitavo the children of Israel are asked to put
on stones.
And what did it really mean to have them on stones? So this may be getting too far from the question.
No, it's the same concept that there. So we know that they're told to write the Torah in 70 languages on stones. So you're asking like a question like practically, how is it possible?
There's a theory that they didn't. Every verse didn't have to be literally on stones in every language. But
maybe they just wrote the 10 Commandments.
Or even just key takeaways.
Right, the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments is an overarching teaching. It contains the whole Torah within it. But the question, that's a very important question to think about, which is the basic question, which is practically speaking, how did it happen? But I'm asking a different question. Why? Like the people there were not speaking 70 languages. I can understand if you are speaking to the United Nations and you're giving the Torah to the United Nations, they could use it. Lord knows they can use it. But let's say you're giving it there. So then you want to speak it in 70 languages. But everybody here was from the same basic families, a bunch of tribes from the same family. They were all speaking to each other in Hebrew. The Torah is given in Hebrew. So why did they need it in 70 languages? there was nobody there who was not speaking Hebrew. Okay, fine. Maybe there was like one group of people snuck in, like the foreign workers. So give it in Egyptian, whatever the Egyptian with the Arab, whatever they are, whatever. So fine. So maybe a couple of other languages, but the people who are in India weren't there with them. Moshe at that speech. Why do they have to give it in English and French and German? What? For the future. So for the future. Very nice. Basically, but yeah. Right. So it's making the point that the Torah is universal, that the Torah speaks. We're chapter 1, verse 5. So we're making the point that the Torah speaks to every single people. How many languages are there in the world? How many languages are there? Well, are you drawing a distinction between like Swiss French and French French? Okay, so the Sfas Emes in the name of the Chidushei Arim says, this is the Ger Rebbe, he says that it's when Moshe translated into those languages, this made the point that he gave the holiness to the Torah when the Torah is taught in those languages. That's the point, that he instilled it with holiness. So that's the idea. So even when the Jews are in exile, they're surrounded, A, by the holiness of the Torah, and B, they also have the idea that the Torah is with them there, even if they have some generations who end up in places where they're very far from the land of Israel, very far from Jerusalem, or they maybe don't speak Hebrew, but the language that they study the Torah in has holiness. The language they study the Torah in has holiness. And in Israel today, a lot of the people there have who are, let's say, in charge of education in the rabbinate, in the religious community, have written off the Jews of the diaspora. They said they're gone, they're finished. We don't, like they say, it's not a factor. We shouldn't spend any resources on them. But this is telling us that there's value to them. There's value, that there's holiness in the Torah that was when it's translated into other languages. Okay, so now the Eretz Torah. The Torah needed to be taught in 70 languages. So Moshe began to explain the Torah. He says, Hashem Elokeinu diber eleinu b'chorev lemor, Rav Lachem sheves b'harazeh. God spoke to us in Chorev and said, you've been living here for too long. You've been living here for too long. Can you imagine that? God says to us, and when we were at Sinai, you've been living here for too long. Stop, leave Sinai. Sinai is not your destination. We could have stayed at Sinai forever, like the people who lived there in Midian, now becoming like a national park, by the way, the area around Mount Sinai in Saudi Arabia. Yeah, they're like doing a lot of effort. I don't know if it stopped, but they were doing a lot of effort. So, Elliot, please, Vakasha, read this Rashi. How you doing, Aryeh? Baruch Hashem. So first Rashi says, yeah, simple meaning, time to move on, time to go on. I said this morning, and Nechama asked me to repeat it, but I'll just say it now for you. It's time to move on. We learned in today's Daf Yomi that a kosher fish, has 4 signs. Anybody know the 4 signs of a kosher fish? I'll say it. So most famous is the fins and the scales, but also the Daf Yomi says, that a non-kosher fish has no spine and has a pointy head. A kosher fish has a rounder head and a spine. So I heard, and I don't know, and I guess some of it, there's no study all without any new insight. I said these 4 signs are a Jew is compared to a fish. Because like Rabbi Akiva said, just like a fish can't survive without water, so too a Jew can't survive without Torah. So a Jew is like a fish. And just like a fish has those signs to be kosher. If a Jew wants to be kosher, he needs those signs. Well, how is a Jew kosher? With the mind. The Jew has to study Torah. You have to educate yourself and always to come closer to God. A spine. A Jew has to have a spine. Jew has to stand for something. You can't live your life without standing for anything. Have a spine. Stand up for what you believe in. Scales, the Jew has to remember to protect ourselves. That the scales protect the fish. The Jew has to grab a chumash 8 times. Here's one right here 8 times. The Jew has to always be working to make sure that we're safe and protected, but also put a fence around the Torah to protect ourselves from the nations of the world that want to attack us and take down our value system. And the Jew, above all, has fins. What does that mean? The fins is what moves. That's what helps the fish move. A Jew always has to be ready to move, for spiritual progress. We can't just stay in one place in our life. We always have to be looking to grow, to improve, to get to a higher level. And if the Jew says, I'm just going to stop and stay in this place, that's a huge mistake. It's an impossibility. The Jew has to always be looking for ways to improve ourselves spiritually, to grow. This, I want you to please remember this in life. You can never be satisfied with where you are. You always have to look for ways to improve. So that's what God says to the Jewish people. They're standing at Mount Sinai. You've been here too long. Move on. And Rashi says it. Rashi says, you've got a lot of reward. You've earned a lot of reward and greatness by living on this mountain. By what did you do? You built the Mishkan, you built the menorah, you built the utensils, you received the Torah, you appointed the Sanhedrin, you appointed leaders. So Rashi says that's what it means. Rabachem, you got a lot here. But even though that you got a lot, time to move on. You can't stay here. Even though you built the Mishkan, received the Torah, built the government, built the menorah, time to move on. You got to go even better. Get to even a higher level, So, okay. So now the pasuk says, Pinu turn usuachem and travel uvo hara Amori. Come to the mountain of the Amorites. Anybody know where that is? Elichai. You know where the mountain of the Amorites is? The Alkol Shechinav. All its neighbors, Barava, Bahar, Vashvela, Benegav, Popayam, Eretz, Kanani, Barava, known at an Nahar Gadol, Nahar Parat. By the way, do not tell people about this outside of this room or we'll have big problems. These are the borders of the land of Israel. Anybody want to know what the borders are? You're going to come to the mountain of the Amorites. I don't know if Rabbi Steinfeld tells us what it is. To all its neighbors in the plain. The Amorites is in the land of Canaan. In all its neighbors in the plains, on the mountains, in the lowlands, in the south, at the sea coast, the land of the Canaanites and Lebanon, until the great river, the Euphrates. So from the river to the sea, the land will be free. From the Euphrates River to the Mediterranean Sea, the land will be, according to the Torah, under Am Yisrael. Anybody? This is what the text says. That's what the text says here. Let's see what Rashi says about this. Let's see if Rashi limits it, but that's what the literal text says. So not everybody takes this literally, but so let's see what it says. It says, "Vo pnu suachem zu derech Arad v'Charma." Go through Arad and Charma. Okay, that's the south. Vo Ahar Amori. Come to the mountain of the Amorites. Rashi says that's literally. Maybe Rabbi Steinfeld has a diagram. Valkol Shcheinav, all of its neighbors. Ammon and Moab Har Seir. This refers to Ammon and Moab and Mount Seir. Ammon and Moab are on the eastern bank of the Jordan River. Okay, that's also ours, according to the Torah. Barava, the plains. Zem Mishur Shalyar. This is the wooded plain. I don't know what that is. I'm not sure. Vashvela. This is the lowlands of the south. This is the land of Judah. Ubanegav u'b'chol payam. What's the south? Ashkelon, Aza. Here we go. Rashi says Aza is part of Israel. Ashkelon, Aza, Kesari, v'Kua, Tinisa b'Sifri. Yeah, it's right there. And then he says Adon Nahar Gadol. So until the great river, which is the Euphrates. Rashi says, "Nation Nizkarim Eretz Yisrael Korei Gadol." It's not really great. Rashi here is citing the Gemara in Shavuos, which we just did. The Euphrates is a little Pisher river, but it's only called great because it's being mentioned next to the land of Israel. Like a king said, like it says, the common saying, "The slave of a king is a king." I never seen the Euphrates. Maybe it's big. I don't know. It's not big. So it's the Delaware. It's a little Pisher river, right? It's no great river, but because it's part of the individual, it's called great. So this is what it means. Now, this is such a powerful Rashi. I'm going to tell you what the Lubavitcher Rebbe said. He said, the slave of a king is a king. They said, attach yourself to the ruler and they'll bow down to you. Come close to somebody who is anointed, become anointed yourself. Kobe, you're way too far. Come right here, please. Vakasha. So he's saying like this. Euphrates is not great, but because it's associated with Canaan, it becomes great. Somebody once came to the Lubavitcher Rebbe and said, "How do I? Oh, you like the yogurt? We're going on a health kick here. Yeah, we're going on a health kick. Baruch Hashem. The yogurt has 20 grams of protein. This yogurt, 20 grams of protein. Okay. What flavors do we get? Not mango. We're not a restaurant. Okay, so somebody once came to the Lubavitcher Rebbe and they said to the Rebbe, "How do I find meaning in my life? I'm such a little nobody. How do I find meaning?" You know what the Rebbe said? Does anybody know? The Rebbe said, "Attach yourself to something great and you'll be great." Meaning, be part of something so much bigger than you and you'll be great. Be part of something bigger. That's what's on the so the slave of a king is a king. And that's what it says here in Rashi. Attach yourself to a potentate and they'll bow down to you. That's what it is. That's what we're doing now. Each of us, I mean, I'm speaking for myself, are so small. But when we attach ourselves to something great like Torah, then we become great like the Torah. We attach ourselves to the Jewish people, we become great. We have to attach ourselves to something meaningful. But on our own, we're nothing. On our own, we're nothing. It's only when we attach ourselves to the tradition, to the values of the tradition, that our life has meaning, and we can find meaning in our life. That's what the Rebbe said. That's what the Rebbe said. That's why the Rebbe was able to inspire. How do I say this in a nice way? I once went to a place in a far-flung corner of the world, and there was an amazing Chabad shliach there. He was just incredible. He was just an amazing person, so generous, so warm, so giving. He wasn't the brightest guy in the world, but who cares, right? He wasn't going to write books on theology or inspire us with his brilliant lectures. But he was the rabbi for the people in that area, and he was doing an incredible good work. And somebody said to me, like, this person, this is the Rebbe's greatness. Like, the Rebbe inspired this man to live his life in this way. If he hadn't met the Rebbe, he would have been like he would have been part of, like, let's say, I'm not saying this in a negative manner. He would have been a plumber or what? A grocer. But he became inspired to be part of something great, and his life has tremendous meaning, and he's living a meaningful life. That's the Rebbe's message, that if you want to have meaning in your life, attach yourself to something so much bigger than you. Attach yourself to something so much bigger than you, and your life will have meaning. Okay, so speaking of meaning, I mean, we have to pray. Let's pray with meaning today. I don't know, like, I get these messages a lot, so I don't know if it means anything, but I'll read it